In a world overflowing with distractions, we seek meaning. How do we transform ambition into something deeper, into true fulfillment? I'm Sam Pepin, CEO of Course Educa, and I've spent years helping businesses succeed by connecting their goals to something bigger. On the Meaningful Podcast, we explore not just how to win in business, but how to grow as individuals. Through conversation with thought leaders, innovators, and everyday heroes, we uncover the stories that drive us towards something greater. Whether you're striving for success, seeking purpose, or just looking for the next steps in your journey, this podcast is your guide to navigating the intersection of ambition, growth, and meaning. So please join me and our incredible guests as we redefine what's possible in both business and life. Enjoy. Great leaders don't set out to be a leader. They set out to make a difference. It's never about the role. It's always about the goal. Welcome to the Meaningful Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Pepin, and today we're diving into defining leadership and vision, turning knowledge into actions, and living a purpose-driven life. Our guest today is Otis McGregor, a retired Green Beret, Lieutenant Colonel, accomplished entrepreneur, and the founder of Tribe Plus Purpose. Otis' extensive military and business background has shaped his passion for developing leaders who will build impactful organizations. He now channels his experience into helping others discover clarity in their purpose, creating a legacy of leaderships that transcends industries. If you enjoyed the discussion, please let the world know with a like, a small review, or even a quick share. Your support helps more people find meaningful content just like this. Let's begin. Mr. Otis McGregor, welcome to the Meaningful Podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Great to see you, Sam.
Great to see you as well. We have a professional, but also a personal relationships. It was great to see you in Denver, and I'm looking forward to a great episode. To kick us off, tell us more about Tribe and Purpose.
Yeah, Tribe and Purpose is about helping people get clarity and resolve in their purpose, and then building a tribe around it so they can all have greater success. You see, purpose is the thing that gets you going. It's your guiding path. It's the cup that's never empty and never full. You can always put more into it. That's why I use the term fulfill your purpose. You don't achieve your purpose. You achieve a vision. And that's one of the reasons that we are so focused on clarity and purpose. And then when you take the other part of our business name, Tribe, nobody gets there alone. You have to have people around you. If you want to call it a tribe, you want to call it a team, you want to call it just a bunch of dudes, I don't care. But nobody gets there alone. I mean, the famous African proverb, and I've always been, because I spend a lot of time in Africa, and I don't like calling Africa like it's a country. It's a continent. But there's a famous, and it's quoted as an African proverb, and I have yet to find an origin of it, that goes something like this: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that's the foundation of what we do at Tribe and Purpose. We help people get clarity and resolve in their purpose. Because if you don't live your life meaningfully through a purpose, then what are you doing? You're sucking oxygen. You're an oxygen thief. Well, everybody has a purpose. Whether you believe it or not, you have a purpose. It's in there. It's up to you to discover it.
Absolutely. Actually, this is quite funny. That was the first quote that I had in my email signature when I began in business. That was exactly that quote. So it's quite lovely. I was wondering, obviously, you have a very interesting background that I'm sure we're going to get into. Tell me more about your definitions or the technique you use to own in on that clarity piece. What's so special and what's so different about it?
Yeah, well, we do this all based around leadership. So, and I usually save it a little bit for towards the end of a conversation or a talk that I'm giving on stage. But I'll tell you right now, we can circle back around on it. My purpose is to create a legacy of leaders, because I believe that great leaders create great organizations. And when we have great organizations in our communities, we have better communities. And when we have better communities around the world, we will have a better world. that's my purpose. That's what I do. That's why I do it. And that's how we help people figure out their purpose. Now, there's some techniques. I mean, I can dive into one of the techniques that I used with clients many times to help them understand their purpose. And that is an analysis of themselves and what they enjoy. So think about it in the sense of what are the things that you're passionate about? And we can go into what's a passion. A passion is something that when you do it, it's like, dang, that was fun, man. Let's do that again. Oh man, I just can't wait to go out into the garage and build something or work on a car, the hot rod, or go to the gym and work out because I'm passionate about it, or tennis or golf, whatever it is, right? 5 things that you're passionate about in your life. And by the way, a passion, here's something else to help folks understand. The difference between a passion and a purpose is enduring. It's overarching. And a true purpose ties back to serving others. A passion is something you have fun doing. And they don't last they're not enduring. I was passionate about rock climbing. I was passionate about whitewater kayaking. And those things passed, right? They were hobbies. I'm passionate about hunting right now. Well, have been for a number of years, but those are passions. So how do you figure that out? How do you dive into it? Understanding those things. So I say, find 5 things that you're passionate about and take each of those things and put them, the title of it, what it is I just happen to have an example of a blank piece of paper. Yeah. But you take it, write the name of that passion at the top of that blank piece of paper. And then I want you to take and write down 3 minimum, 5 maximum things that are part of that passion.
Yeah. It reminds me of the Brian Tracy framework, where he said that the first thing when you want to plan a goal is you want to write it down. When you're thinking about the modern age of distractions, of overflowing information and so on, would you say clarity, or perhaps seeking clarity, is one of the hardest thing there is in this perhaps addicted times?
No, I don't think so. I think clarity is a choice. So all those other things have nothing to do with clarity. They are distractions. All the social media, you name it, shiny objects, the leaves flickering on the tree out in the yard through the window, they're all just distractions. They're not, they don't affect my clarity, because I know what my purpose is. But they're distractions that keep me from moving forward in my purpose. And that's the way I like to define it. Not as they're not fogging up the glasses or the windshield, right? They're just a distraction. And whatever that thing may be, you have to make the choice on what it is. Is it something I want to be distracted by? So that's the way I look at it.
Sure. And one thing that is interesting, which when you mention kind of like this short-term to long-term relation, obviously being passion being something that may change over time, purpose to you seems to be something that can actually last a lifetime, correct?
Yeah. And, I get that question a lot. And where your purpose can change is a life-changing event. Whether it's, something tragic in your life, in your family, physical, change, maybe something, I don't know, there's so many things that can happen, but yes, your purpose, and that's why I mean it's enduring. Your purpose is something that continues. It's not, you don't achieve it. You don't accomplish it. You fulfill it. And that means you continue in it each and every day, right? I mean, 'cause, your vision, your goals, your objectives, all those things are finite. Your purpose is not finite. It's infinite.
It's endless. You said something very interesting when you were defining purpose. You said purpose is derived from serving others, which is obviously something that I agree with. Why do you think serving others is such in such an intricate portion of living a meaningful life? What do you think that derives from? What's that key spark?
That's what we were made to do. Humans are made to serve others. There's, call it God, universe, whatever belief path that you walk down. It goes back to the African proverb of, you don't get there alone. You cannot survive alone. I've been there, done that. You see, there's that great TV show Alone that we all just go, whoa, man, that's awesome. But you know what? They're not alone because they get checked on. Yeah, they don't get any, but they're still not alone. They're getting checked on, right? There's people that come in and do the checks, so they're still not alone. It'd be kind of hard. Who was the Survivor man? Not Bear Grylls, the other one. Had a TV show, and he was like the only one he carried a camera, extra batteries, and all this stuff. It's the only survival show I've ever seen where he was truly alone because he's filming, much like the TV show Alone, but there was no checking in. And he would move and survive, over a 10-day period, not a long time, but still 10 days, a lot of people can't do a day. Surviving and giving, Tony Robbins quote, I've always loved this one since the first time I heard him say it. Living is giving. And if you're not giving of yourself, then you're not living. If you're not helping others, and my favorite way of putting this is you're being a selfish son of a bitch. If you're not sharing what you know, your experiences, your knowledge with others, then you're being selfish, flat out. You're being selfish. Because I've had people, this cracks me up, because I posted one of my whiskey words. I talked about that a year or two ago, and I had some really interesting comments from people on there. And you never know how true it is, on how true that person believes, or if they're just trying to be funny or a smart ass. But it's well, I had to go through this. Why should I share what I know? They've got to figure it out on their own. I'm like, wow, dude, if you really believe that about yourself and your life, I feel bad for you, man. And I sure hope that you took watching the video and maybe it made a mark on you that you might change. But goodness gracious, can you imagine that? Can you imagine? And there's people that do that, right? I talk to them. You've talked to them. Business folks are like, well, why should I spend time or money teaching, my managers and junior managers how to lead better because I figured it out. Look at me. Look how successful my business is.
Yeah, and it's selfish. Absolutely, it's selfish. I think that things that defines you specifically, obviously professionally, even more is definitely leadership. You mentioned twice already in this conversation. Obviously had such an interesting relationship with leaderships from your background, from everything you do professionally as well. If you had to put it in words, what would you say is the most precise definition of what a leader is? What we always have this question, but what's the leader's like? What's the definition of it?
The leader is someone who sets the vision for what he wants to achieve and enlists others. And enlist, that word is a powerful word because what I'm doing is I'm pulling people into my vision. I am quite literally, a great leader sells their vision to their team. That's what a great leader does. So not only do I create it, but I'm convincing people around me that this vision is freaking awesome and I want to be part of it. So I got to sell it to them. And when I know, this is how I know that they've bought it, they see themselves in that vision. They don't see, oh, I just want to prop Otis up so Otis can, grow his business and, blah, blah. No, I want to be part of that vision. I see myself as a piece of it in the future. And that's what leaders do. They establish the standards, they establish the vision, they establish the values of the organization, and those drive the culture, and they sell that all, and they build a team around that of people that want and buy into it. They want to be part of it. They buy into it. They're willing to give up their most precious asset, time, to be part of accomplishing something bigger than themselves. That's what leadership is. And it goes from business to warfare. It doesn't matter. That's what it is. Or even, student government leadership. It's all leadership. It doesn't matter. The principles are the same. Whether you're leading men into combat or you've got a new widget that's going to cure cancer, right? Well, you gotta believe in it and you gotta sell it. Build a team around you.
So much of leadership is about attractiveness. I think you said it best, which is it's about not only to having a vision and being clear on it, but then selling that vision so that everybody can not only be on the same page as you, but seeing themselves in that vision. How can a human being maximize and optimize their attractiveness from all you've been able to see? What are a couple of traits that are recurrent and as any leader?
I've given just recently a couple of keynotes about this subject right here, and that's command presence. When you walk in a room, you look like you know what you're doing. Sometimes you don't. But if you look like it, people are going to go, huh, what's Otis up to? Who's that guy over there? Where's he going? That's, it's the, you could equate it to the person who is standing on the street corner and going and just looking up at the sky. What does everybody else do when you see that? Yeah, I challenge you, walk downtown tomorrow or later this afternoon. Spend about a minute and a half just looking up and see how many people stop and go, what's he looking at? That's leadership, right? That is leadership. I'm doing something, I'm taking an action, and people are like, what's going on with that? I want to see more. I want to learn more. That looks really cool. It must be something really cool because look, this guy's standing there looking at something. Am I missing out? I want to be part of it. That is, the more I talk about it, the more I'm laughing about it. What kind of an interesting experiment that could be, and how many people would stop, and maybe because people are always getting a little funny about interacting. They may just do the walk by and kind of go, huh, and then you'll see them as they walk out of your eyesight. They'll go, what was he looking at? They don't want to get caught looking, but they're looking. That's a really interesting human experiment. Well, we might have to try that sometime.
So absolutely reminds me of a video. Maybe you saw it. It's going quite viral. It was in a schoolyard. And there was some basically music playing. Everybody was just sitting down. Nobody was basically doing anything. But then there's one guy standing up, and he basically do all sorts of interesting dance move and very weird dancing. And then everybody look at him side eyes. But then one person joined in, two person joined in, 5, 7, 10, 12. And then surely but surely, pretty much half the schoolyard basically is dancing with him. That's what I call law of attractiveness personally. That's how I quantify it and I qualify it most importantly. What's your relationship? You seem like a very pragmatic, logical guy, but what's your relationship with the laws of the universe?
You mean like Isaac Newton sort of laws, or you mean God and Christian beliefs and those things?
Sure. What I'm talking about is in your leadership developments and in your relationship with the physical world, and how is that basically enhanced or optimized through the spiritual world, the law of attractiveness, for example, being one of them. Does that play any role in the way you teach?
Uh, yeah, I think so because that's how I judge my morality. Uh, I base my values on my Christian beliefs and how I act, and the decisions I make and the things that are important to me, and how I rank order those things, for lack of a better way of putting it, in my life. So yeah, I mean, those are some deep founded beliefs that are the foundation of all my actions. And I always, whether I'm doing it consciously or not, I do my best to walk in Christ's path, knowing that I can never be like Christ, but to walk that path to grow nearer and more like Him. And so, yes, that is a foundational thing that I do in how I act, how I do things, how I treat others. And I saw something the other day, and I thought it was really, really good job. I wanted to pat him on the back. The news, well, he's no longer a news anchor, has his own channel, Tucker Carlson. And I saw just a soundbite, and I thought it was really cool. How he said it. He said he's not going to be evangelical. He's a Christian, believes in Christ and believes in his Christian beliefs strongly, but he's not going to be evangelical because his belief, and I think this is why I thought it was interesting, his belief is that every person he's ever seen in the public eye that was evangelical was lying and had a fall from grace in there, whether it was, the temptations were too much as they got strong, more famous or whatever, they always fell. And of course, not all of them. There's always the exception. Billy Graham was a great example of somebody who, as far as I've ever seen, never had that. But so many others, when they became these evangelical people, famous, things fell apart. Their moral Christian beliefs were no longer a guide for them. And I just thought it was really interesting the way Tucker said that, that, hey, I'm going to just very similar to what I said and what I believe is, I'm not walking around and, hitting people in the forehead with a cross to convert them to Christianity, but I'm living my life as an example for others to follow. And I think that is a great way of putting it. And then I'll caveat this with, I'm not a Tucker Carlson waving the flag sort of guy. There's some things he says that are I agree with. Some things he says I don't agree with, just like anybody else. I just thought that soundbite was like, that's the way I live my life. That's the way I have been living my life for many, many years, even subconsciously, not, in other words, not aware of it. That was how I was living until I became more consciously aware, more self-aware of who I am and what I do. And I look back on my life and realize that, yeah, that's how I've been living.
Sure. Yeah, and it's my belief that you can derive interesting concept, or at least a couple of interesting thoughts from pretty much anybody. This very adversary mindset that we have nowadays, I think is counterproductive. And I love Tucker Carlson shows as well. I think he's doing fantastically well since he left Fox News. One thing that you mentioned, and it's interesting because we actually step on another point, but you came back to this idea, but it's the fake it until you make it idea. You said when you're commending presence, you're stepping up to a room. You may not even know that you're obviously commending presence, maybe perhaps because you think you're not, or you're not to that caliber yet. Do you agree with that whole? Do you embrace it? What's your relationship with fake it until you make it?
So there's a difference. Fake it till you make it. Uh, There's a fine line. And in fact, I'll give a plug for a friend of mine, Scott Reeb. I can't remember if y'all have met or not, but I ran into him at this conference that I was at this weekend, and we were talking about Christian beliefs, and he was talking with somebody, and I can't remember who, and the guy called him out on, and not in a negative way, but just kind of, hey, in a discussion that Scott held the mirror up and saw himself in the, ooh, I'm a person doing that, and it was the infamous Amazon bestseller trick, right? So if you create a category of something, call it, I don't know, just something that's really, really niched down to where your book is the only book, then guess what? You're going to be a bestseller. And that's something he did. And he was using bestseller and advertising and a couple of other things. And when the gentleman he was talking to brought that up, and again, it wasn't a target at Scott. It was a realization that caused him to hold the mirror up and look at himself. Scott went back and had his team take off all best-selling references because he realized that he was lying. He wasn't faking it until he makes it, right? He was lying. He had crossed a threshold, his belief, his understanding of his values of integrity. And that was the beauty of that little story that I need to give Scott a call and just thank him for it, because there's so much truth to that. Because yes, fake it till you make it. I have confidence in myself and my team to solve the problem. I have confidence in myself and my team that we will succeed. That's not faking it till you make it. Faking it till you make it is filling a line of BS. I've got 7,000 blah, blah, blah. I'm a bestseller, New York Times, Amazon, da, 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 da. Okay, really? Did you really sell that many books, or are they sitting in your garage? Because I know a lot of people that have done that, right? Because you could play the game. If you're willing to spend about $10,000 when your book gets published, $10, $15, $20,000, whatever that price point might be, you can buy a crap ton of books and have them sitting in your garage and look like a bestseller.
Yeah. That's such a proof of character, though. What Scott did, that reaction, I think, is the manliest reaction that he could have had. Which is because, like you said, there's a way to broad these perhaps constructive criticism up, but if it's brought up in a positive lens, like it seems to be the case with that question that was brought up to you, or that perhaps interrogation that was brought up to Scott. The way he owned in on that, and he said, "You know what? Actually, you're right. Let me rectify myself. Let me actually prove to you that I'm not a phony. I'm who I am. I'm who I say I am." Um, that's a massive amount of character. How, when you're thinking about a man's duty, and yes, I'm taking the word man duty. It doesn't matter to me if it matters to you and the audience. I promise you, I love all people. When you're thinking about men duties, how does someone acquire the experience, the knowledge that is necessary to be this resilient and even witty to a certain extent? What do you think is the magical, perhaps, dust?
Well, there's an academic piece, right? The book's behind me, right? a choice that I am not the smartest person in the room, nor do I know it all. And as long as we hold those two beliefs true, we can make ourselves better. So that's one. Knowledge, gaining knowledge, education through reading, talking with people, mentors, podcasts, heck, YouTube University, you name it, right? There are resources. So that's part one. Part two is action, because knowledge means nothing until you take action using the knowledge. And you take that action with the knowledge, and then when you in that action and post action, you reflect. How could I have done this better? What's missing? And if you do those three things, academics to learn, gain knowledge, action to implement knowledge, reflection to look at how the action happened and how it can be better, because it can always, folks, it can always be better. A perfect game, baseball, World Series right now, right? A perfect game is not perfect, because that pitcher, I know that pitcher, even if he only throws, what is the math count, like 27 pitches or something like that, a true perfect game, right? Strikes out everybody with 3 pitches. Even if he does that pitcher, if he's anything, worth anything, and if I'm his manager, and even if he's worth anything, he is reflecting back on those pitches and thinking, yeah, that guy struck out, but you know what? That fastball, the placement could have been better, right? That's the kind of attitude. When you have that attitude in life of, I can always be better. Perfection is something we achieve. There's a great Vince Lombardi quote. I love this one. And I'm going to butcher it because I don't think I've ever quite gotten it right. But he says something along, and folks, if you don't know who Vince Lombardi is, the NFL championship trophy is named the Lombardi Trophy. Vince Lombardi, unbelievable football coach. And from everything I've ever read, a great man and a great leader. And he has this great quote of, man, we can never achieve perfection. And I think he actually says greatness. Great along the path to greatness. Nope, I'm messing it up. Along the path to perfection. I told you I was bad at quotes. Along the path to perfection, greatness can be achieved. We can never reach perfection, but damn, we can be great. We can be great.
For me, the simplest unfair advantage is the 1% better ideology. Because the truth is, like you said beautifully, not only perfection is impossible, but it's to me, and I will lay that to a meaningful manner. To me, the quest of life, the purpose of life, actually, which is in my opinion theosis. You talked a little bit about this earlier on this call as well. The fact of understanding that you will always fall short of the glory of Christ, but perhaps you can work as hard as you can and as smart as you can, so you can be as close to Him as possible, as godlike as possible. When you're thinking of this, you can apply to any areas of life. From the top performing people that you ever came across, do you see it's something that it's shared across the board? Do you think that's just one thing that you need to have to compete at the highest level, this 1% better mentality?
Oh yeah. And I'll share with you my I'm laughing to myself because I'm trying to think of some smart aleck way of saying it. But I did a masterclass about 10 days ago, and I did the math. And I didn't say 1%. I said just 0.1%. So think about 0.1%. If I do 100 tasks in a day, I pick out one task, and 1/10 of that one task, I do better. You know, at the end of 365 days, I will be 45% better. Just do that one thing every day. Holy crap, dude. Holy crap. 45%? I mean, we got a mutual fund that's giving me 45% return, I'm investing.
That was exactly where I was going. That's the magic of compounding, right? Einstein said it best when the life basically I think he said it this way, if I'm not mistaken. He said compounding interests is, I don't recall the exact quotes. We're pushing quotes basically back and forth. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful Sunday. He said something along the lines of how basically great compounding is basically. He was talking about compounding interest, but you can replace interest by anything. Compounding your competence in any skills that you work on, and it's actually very interesting. This 0.1 ideology. I've never done the math myself, but even 45% in a year, that's tremendous. That's like actually incredible. So perhaps an even more achievable, easier barrier to entry. So maybe we should quote the 0.1 rule instead of the 1% rule.
I mean, it just shows you how little effort it can take. Continuous effort, by the way, how little continuous effort it can take to make massive improvements in who you are and how you live.
Yeah, absolutely. One key component of leaderships, and obviously of what you're doing as well, is tribe. We talk about purpose for a little while here, but tribe is also extremely important and super interesting. The first thing that I wanted to ask you about is obviously anything relating to a tribe needs teamwork, needs a command presence, no doubt. But when you're thinking of ways to, once you have the attractive vision, you're able to sell your vision, you're able to attract people in a meaningful manner. What would you say in this modern age is the best way to teamwork with other leaders to optimize and propose perhaps your vision?
I think it's to seek others that have similar values as you do. Their values align with yours. You notice I'm choosing that word, and I've always chose that word very carefully, align, because they don't have to be exactly the same. And one of the great things about human nature is when you are okay with being public about what your values are, what your purpose is. Other people hear it and are interested in it, and it attracts people with like values, and they see value. Your purpose may not be the same, but they see their purpose aligning with your purpose. And to get right down to the nuts and bolts of that, that's your attraction. But the action, I'm a huge fan of masterminds, and the true mastermind, where it is a group of like-minded individuals who want everybody else to succeed more than themselves. I define that, quantify that with if I take my desire to win as 100%, and I take that, the right person for me is somebody whose desire to win is 49% for themselves and 51% for everybody else in that tribe, in that mastermind tribe. And then that's the organization that you want to be part of. That's the group that you want to surround yourselves with, people that care for you and want you to succeed. Now, there's some other principles out there. Marshall Goldsmith talks about, the people you spend the most time with, the 5 people you spend the most time with, are a reflection of yourself. And, Tony Robbins talks about, you want to find mentors to be around, proximity that are 5 years ahead of you, because then they're close enough to understand the pain that you're going through, and they're in the same field. But it all comes back to the values have to be aligned, because I can tell you, I'll pick on Grant Cardone. I don't know him personally, but what I've seen, that it would be really cool to be on the stage with him, but he would not be in my mastermind group. He would not be my mentor. I would go on the stage with him because he can attract a crowd, no doubt. But he wouldn't be part of my tribe, my mastermind. That, just from what I seen of where his priorities are in that fake it till he makes it. It appears, right? And perceptions is what we see in life. So Grant, you hear this and I'm wrong, man, give me a call up and let's go grab a beer and chat it out, man. You can tell me different. But what I've seen, and I'm picking on him also, but what I've seen is, yeah, that's not really how I live, how I sell our business, how I look to help people. I could be, again, we're walking that fine line of judging, and I don't like to judge people, but my perception is that likely he and I wouldn't get along.
Interesting. When you're thinking about perception, that's actually a very interesting way to go at it. When you're thinking of a perception, what I found, and correct me if I'm wrong. Obviously, you have a few years on me, so that'd be great experience to work with. But I would say that 99% of the people that I meet after having a negative assumption about them is actually way better than I thought. We tend to judge very quickly, and that's also fine. It's also biological and survival, basically biases. You need to judge because obviously it once upon a time there was dangers everywhere. So you better be afraid of something you don't know than to actually being killed by it, right? Very simply. But when you're thinking about perception, how would you say it affects how you typically enter relationships? Let's say you had some bad word, somebody that you trust had a bad word on somebody, and that person wants to grab dinner with you. What's your typical reaction about it, and what do you think is a professional way to handle these type of quite actually often occurring professional basically settings?
I think a couple of things. One, I'm generally speaking, I'm open to talking with anybody and hearing their story and learning about them. That's the simple action step. The true reality is the more self-awareness and self-confidence we have, the less judgment we have of others. Because if we're judging ourselves, we use the same filters that we judge ourselves by on others. The people in the world that we live in is a reflection of ourselves and how and who we think we are and what we see. Our perception, our judgment comes from our beliefs. And the more open, and here's how I define this, the more positive outlook we have, more positive energy we have in our life. And I'm not talking about the Oriental aura type of energy. I'm talking about the positivity. The things are going to always work out. Let's fix this. There's a solution. That can do that. Let's create that. That kind of positive energy. The less judgment we have. Now, and that judgment is broad, and I'll tell you what I mean here, because when we have a positive outlook on things, we're not feeling sorry for ourselves. When we're feeling sorry for ourselves, it's hard to take action because we just think we're going to screw it up anyways, right? The only safe place when you feel like that is the corner of the room in a fetal position, because anything else you'll probably screw up, right? I'm talking about the exact opposite of that. The life is great. It'll always work out. Things happen for me, not to me. I get to choose what I get to do, all these sort of things. I've defined it this way. There's a firewall in our brain. It's the good idea firewall. And the good idea firewall is up and fully engaged when we have doubt, when we doubt ourselves, we doubt others, we doubt the outcome. That firewall is boom, man. It is a thick steel curtain that prevents solutions from coming forward. But when we start to change our attitude and we have a positive outlook for anything and everything around us, And we see that things can happen for us. Everything can happen for us or not have an effect on us at all. And we start to understand that firewall comes down. And when that firewall comes down, the good ideas flow. The things that might be crazy come out. And those crazy ideas are the things that are going to change the world. And that judgment of those ideas before they even become ideas, that's what that firewall is. It's a judgment. It's a mental internal judgment that shuts it down. That's the same judgment we have when we look at others. When we are feeling sorry for ourselves and we think life sucks and that guy screwed me over and that politician is a piece of crap and he's cheating to sit there, guess what? That's true for you. That's the way it's going to be. That's going to be your truth. But if you change it, then you know what? You can change your truth to live intentionally and happily, to put it just plain and simple.
Yeah. Perhaps you don't see the world for what it is, but you see the world for who you are. Is the way I always looked at it. And it's one thing that is super interesting to me is, I see this more and more with the clashes of generation. What we tend to see, there is obviously this, not to make this political, but we have this great obviously quote, which is typically what happens is if you're 20 years old and you're not a liberal, you have no heart. If you're 80 years old and you're not and you're not a conservative, you have no brain, basically. Incredible citation. But what I tend to see is the more you accumulate experience and therefore obviously downfalls, failures, and so on, typically the hardest people are on themselves, and therefore the hardest people are on the world. Does that match your reality that you live in? You think there's something to say about how much hardship you had to go through and your outlook on life?
Yeah, I mean, somewhat. You know, it's only hardship if you say it's hardship and you believe it's hardship. You know, I love this analogy of how we look at our past, and your past can be your prison or it can be your schoolhouse. And just a simple thing like that, you know, if I choose the past as a prison, if I'm always going back and I'm always mad about something that happened, you know, yesterday, last year, 20 years ago, if I'm always bringing that up, I'm always mad about that, because you know what happens when you talk about that negative energy comes back, right? It comes back into who you are in that moment. And you're no longer present in the moment because you're pissed off at the past that you cannot change, by the way. That's a problem, as opposed to, well, how could I have done that better to make my life better now? That's the schoolhouse approach. And I think, you know, when we look at things that way, it's so much different, you know, because you can't change the past, folks. I mean, you know, we always talk about time machines and this, that, and the other. And, you know, I can tell you, I wouldn't change it. If I could go back in the past, I wouldn't do that. Because, you know, here's something else in a leadership thing a great leader does and has the ability to do is, what's the second and third order effects of that decision? Well, if I go back and change something in the past, I won't be the same person I am today. So why would I be concerned about that? Why would I leave that as an anchor and not use it as a lesson of reflection of how I can do better? So much better way to live your life.
That's powerful. Absolutely. This one thing that we perhaps hover around quite a bit is actually something that one of my I think good friend in the making is it told me. His name is George Ishii, and he said, "Sam, we actually spelled action wrong in the dictionary." I said, "No, why is that?" And he said, "Well, the I is misplaced. You should put the I in front of the A, so it's I act on." And I thought this was incredible. And It's a pretty good. It's a pretty good one. It's a pretty good one. When you're thinking of action, what's your take on the doers, on the people that actually are people that embrace actions and like to do great things and like to do a lot of it. What would you say is the most effective way to go from a vision, from an idea, all the way to action? Do you have a process that you might want to lay out for that?
Yeah. I mean, you break it down, and you always start with the vision. You take your vision and you break it into goals, right? And goals, you can use the SMART goals process or technique to define them, specific, measurable, actionable, timely. What's R? Dadgummit. Whatever R is. Yes, whatever R is. Relative. 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 Uh, and then you break those goals into objectives. And here's how I define objectives. So goals are big things. So think like a quarter, a year, something like that, right? Those are the bigger things. And depending on what kind of vision that you've created that we're breaking down, that depends on how your goals are broken out also. So objectives are subsets of goals. Because now I'm taking this massive thing and I'm breaking it down. We're going to continue to break it down because now I've got objectives, and I'm going to take my objectives and I'm going to put them into action steps. And my action steps are things that I might be able to accomplish in a day or a week, right down to what am I doing in the next hour, this afternoon, that will move me closer to that vision. And all these things that we've created, as we broke them down, they all need to be measurable. We all just like in a SMART goal. How do I know that I'm doing this? How do I know that I'm successful? How do I know that we won the game? Right? That's why there's points. That's why there's goal lines. Well, the same thing in life. How do you know? A client of mine said one of his goals was to spend more time with his family. Great. I applaud you for that. How are you measuring it? Tony, I'll go back to Tony Robbins. He does a great bit, and I'm sure it actually happened knowing him because he's done so many events. But he stops in the audience, and if you've never seen Tony Robbins, man, it is powerful, and I always enjoy it. But he's walking in the audience, and he stops and talks to a guy, and says, "What do you want? What do you want from life?" And Tony Robbins, 20 feet tall, this massive man. And the guy sitting down there in a chair says, "Well, I want to make more money." Tony says, "You got it." Pulls his wallet out and hands him a $5 bill. "You just made more money. Congratulations." That's not the outcome. That's not the solution. What is it? I want, what if classically, what if he'd said, "You know what? I'd like a new pickup." Would Tony have written him a check? I don't know. But when you start to think about things in that sense is, well, how do I know that I'm spending more time with my family? And what does that mean? Does that mean that Miss Suzanne and I go to lunch? Does that mean that Miss Suzanne and I sit on the couch and watch a TV show together? What does that mean? What does more time mean? And that's when we start to, it sounds really nitpicky, and my client kind of, but the reality is how do I know that I'm doing it right if I can't measure it? And when we measure things and we reflect on that measurement, we're living life with intention. We're in control. We're shifting from reaction, the show up and see what happens today lifestyle, to proaction. And when we live in control of our life with intention, that is some of the most powerful things that we can do because we're happy. We are choosing. When we make the choices, we're happy. When we react to what happens, we're not in control. Everybody wants to be in control. Everybody talks about it. Few people take the effort and the action to be in control of their life.
So what you can measure, you can manage. It's one of the core strength of any business person. If you're trying to build anything, you need to have KPIs. You need to have what's success. Defining success is definitely step one. One thing that I want to get your take on, and I think that could be a very insightful for me as well, anybody else that might be in their early walks of life. You mentioned happiness. When you're in control, you're happy. To quote you, when you look in the grand scheme of things and everything that needs to occur, or perhaps you think needs to occur for you to be happy, how significant as happiness and feeling happiness is important for you in your day-to-day life?
Oh, it's what I strive for every day, because I go back to the firewall. If I'm frustrated and pissed off and just going through the motions, I'm not seeing solutions. I'm not seeing opportunities. I'm walking by them. Every door is closed when I have that sort of belief in my head. And the happier I am, the more enjoyment I'm getting out of things I do, the more open my mind is to creativity. And creativity is where solutions come in. It's where, wow, look what I can do here. Ooh, man, that didn't work out, but you know what? That didn't work out the way I wanted it to, but did it work out as I needed it to? And I start to see things in a different way. And I start to say, okay, well, yeah, that didn't go quite the way I wanted to, but the next one will go better, because now I'm looking at it and I'm reflecting on it. I'm back to my schoolhouse and not my prison. And I'm looking at things that way, and I'm more in control. And the more I do it, the more in control I am, and the happier I am. I'm more fulfilled I am, because guess what I'm doing? Walking in a path to fulfill my purpose. When you're doing that, that's the power of living with intention, is I've got clarity in my purpose, and my actions lead towards its fulfillment. Everybody can do that.
Mr. Otis McGregor, was an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me, Sam. And it's always great to hang out with you, man.
Thank you so much. Any last words for our audience?
Live your life with intention. Do what you want to do. Pursue what you want to pursue. That's the power of living. That's how, God, could you imagine? Let's pause. Just think about that. If everybody lived that way, no war, no famine, man, what a beautiful place. What a beautiful place. Let's do that.
Thank you for spending your time with us today on the Meaningful Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review or share it with someone who could benefit from it. And always remember, your story matters. Make it meaningful. We hope to see you next time.